Hey, cats and kittens. I hope you can hear me, as we had difficulty last time. Um, so today's live stream was supposed to be about scams, with my friends Access OSINT and Zuin. We had to reschedule that until next Thursday. So if you want to catch that, we're going to be talking about scams, how to track scams, and scammers, and some of the resources that we use. Um, so this is the first one I'm doing by myself, so please bear with me. I hope it is not terribly boring for you. But my plan is to go through some maritime stuff that I generally use. I'll do some quick housekeeping, and then we'll dive right into some resources that I use, and then I'm going to poke around on marine traffic and see if we can find anything fun. So let me pull up Chrome. So first off, I just want to go through a few things of interest. If you are not familiar with the Layer 8 conference, it's in October, and the call for presenters ends tomorrow. I highly suggest that you submit if you have not. It's a really great OSINT conference, and I got into OSINT by attending this conference and actually playing in a Trace Labs event there a few years ago. So all the organizers are really great. It's I just highly recommend it. So even if you're not presenting, definitely sign up to attend because it's a very good conference. Also, the SANS OSINT Summit is coming up. I'm not sure the actual date, but submit to that too. That's a really good conference. I know a lot of people from OSINT Curious spoke last time, and I think I'm going to submit this time, and hopefully get accepted, and you'll see me there. So the other thing that happened this past weekend was Trace Labs, and I just wanted to say congratulations to the winners. Oh, that's too big. So we played, I had a team, and we came in second, the Federal Bureau of OSINT. It was really fun. I swore I wasn't going to play again after this for a while because I've done so many of them crammed together. But I taste that black badge, and now I might try again next time. But everybody did really good, and I think we submitted a lot of information. Let me see if I can. 7,000 submissions, 5,000 accepted. So that's a lot of information that goes to law enforcement. So that's very cool. If you haven't done a Trace Labs event, they're really fun and a good way to practice your OSINT for a good cause. And then the final thing that I wanted to show was quick self-promotion. So before I became an OSINT analyst, I'm a senior OSINT analyst now. Before I became an OSINT analyst, I was a graphic designer for about 15 years. So sometimes I like to integrate that into my OSINT stuff. And I know there's not a lot of OSINT swag that's out there right now. So I often will create shirts and stuff, and all the proceeds go to the Innocent Lives Foundation and Operation Safe Escape. So it is, I will post this if anyone cares to buy anything. I'll just scroll through a few here for you. I mean, it lets me, I can make literally anything. So there's like a million of each thing in here. I have a tarot card one. This is just the newest one God, there's so many. But I have some sayings, and every time I get some free time, I just add some. So if anybody's interested, there's the link. It is also for a good cause. So with that, I am going to dive into some maritime stuff. I'm not sure if this will take the full hour, but we'll see. So I have a plethora of maritime links and resources that I use. There's some that I use more than others. I investigate all different kinds of maritime stuff, from sanctions to just tracking a specific ship to see where it's going or what it's doing, investigating ports and what's happening at the ports and who's entering and exiting ports. And so I don't have like a typical use case. It kind of varies depending on the stuff I'm working on. It's also kind of hard if you've ever looked for maritime stuff using fully open source, as in free stuff. It's very hard because, like marine traffic, this is marine traffic. They have a free version, but it only lets you look at the current location of ships. So, if you click on any of these, you will only see the position that it picks up the satellite right now. If you pay for it, you can see the historical tracks, which shows you, where it's been and port calls and all sorts of other things. So it's a little harder to get around without an account, but there are ways to get some extra intelligence once you figure out what ship you're looking at. So some of the things I use are, a lot of the things I use are from Twitter. Admittedly, a lot of people on Twitter, journalists, people just track ships and they track planes. And what I do is I create a tweet deck of all the people who are tracking whatever I'm looking at the time. So if I'm searching for a specific sanctioned vessel or, an Iran vessel or something like that, if more often than not, it's already been spotted by somebody and somebody is tracking it. So if you go to Twitter and you just put it in, so let me try this. So the Makerin I mentioned on my last stream, if you watched that. So if we come to Twitter, and we put in something like Makerin, no, that's not the right one. The Makerin vessel. See, you can get immediately, you get people who are already tracking it and showing satellite pictures of it. So while satellite imagery is great, you don't have to pay for it because a lot of it is already done for you. And now you have to vet it and make sure that you're actually looking at it and it's not just somebody assuming something. But if you take all of this and investigate further, you can kind of build out a case without having the full versions of things. Now, granted, the full versions are better, but the thing with maritime, if you're not familiar with maritime at all, these ships have a satellite or AIS on them, and it's really a security feature. So ships don't run into each other, or if there's a storm, people know how to get to them. But it's also used for tracking ships. The caveat is that ships can change their AIS. So we saw that this week. What was that vessel name? We saw that this week with the ship outside of, I think it was Iran, where they were spoofing their AIS. So they've been doing that outside of like Russia. They someone is changing, you can go into the AIS system and you can change your numbers. So each ship has an MMSI. Let me see if I can find one. If we click on this crude oil tanker, they have an IMO number and they have an MMSI number, or MIMSI. And you can spoof that. The IMO number shouldn't change. But you can see how much stuff is locked when you have the free version. So the issue with ships is they can spoof their identity. They can spoof their location. They can change their numbers to appear like they are another ship. So what could be happening in a situation where a ship is appearing off the coast of Russia or wherever, it might not actually be there. It might be another ship just using its numbers, and then when you see it on the satellite, it looks like it's there. And then they switch it back, and it looks like they're back in port or whatever. So they can bounce around. And when you look at historically, which I can't show you because, again, this is free, but if you look historically at tracks, you can see it jump. And a lot of times, like, for instance, if a ship was here and it changed its MIMSI number to a ship over here, you would see the track jump across land in a straight line, and it would show the time was like 2 seconds or something, which obviously a ship cannot travel that distance in that amount of time. So that's an indication that it's spoofing its location. Hello Toro says, do you see any deep fakes with satellite imagery? I have not yet. No. And actually, I don't personally have access to any satellite imagery yet. So all the satellite imagery I use are from Twitter. But no, I have not seen that yet. So if you're looking for ships, if you see their track going like an unusual route, like across land, or it bounces all the way over here and back and over and back, and that's a good indication that it's spoofing its GPS or its AIS. Fishing vessels in China do this a lot because they're illegally fishing and they don't want people to know what they're doing, so they will switch their number with another number, do what they got to do, and then switch back. So when you track ships in this area, in the South Sea, you'll see a lot of jumping. Let me see if I can filter this for... We can filter for... I was looking for Navy. Let's just go tankers. So you can filter these down to show, like, these are probably all oil tankers or similar chemical tankers, and you can see their tracks. And a lot of oil tankers spoof their location to deliver oil to sanctioned areas. So if an oil ship wanted to travel to Venezuela or something like that, it might spoof its AIS so it could come over and do that, and then it will turn it back on. They also like to meet with other ships, so meetings are an indication that something might be happening. So if you are tracking historically and you see meetings, it's not necessarily an indication that something bad is happening, but it is something that should trigger you to investigate that ship a little more, especially if it's a ship that you've then Googled and you can see that it has a past history of transporting illegal arms or oil or something like that. Chances are it's still doing that. So on top of Twitter, just searching for the vessel itself, which let's see if we can find anything else cool down here. Oh yeah, so the Makerin is a tanker that was made into a warship, and it's supposedly transporting, they're saying it's transporting things that it shouldn't be, to Venezuela, I think it was. And that it skates around being sanctioned because it's a Navy vessel versus a tanker. So they fall under different requirements as to when they're allowed to be searched. Are there any non-sketchy reasons to spoof AIS? Yes. AIS can be spoofed, not necessarily spoofed, but if their AIS machine is broken, that it could show that there's a gap in their satellite, which, going dark is an indication of bad things happening or that their thing broke. So it's really difficult to investigate maritime stuff because so much of it is, there's so many variables. It could be a broken AIS. They could be spoofing it. They could be doing something perfectly fine. You really need like several different things to verify what you're looking at. So if you see dark activity, like, yes, look at that further. Maybe go to Twitter and search and see if anybody's talked about that ship. Or Google, or check the OFAC sanctions list. Maybe that ship has been sanctioned. So there's a list, the OFAC blacklist. The State Department sanctions people, and they sanction the vessels and companies associated with them. So you can look at a whole list, or you can search for a specific ship. Like, it's probably not going to come up because it's, let's see. Try sanctioned. It's just telling me what OFAC is. So you can find things like this, like oil tanker seized by U.S. authorities, and then it usually tells you the IMO number. I'm going to actually copy that and see if I can find it in marine traffic. Like this says it was part of a ship-to-ship transfer operation with the Sabiel. So oftentimes ships will meet up and they'll transfer oil from one ship to another. For legal reasons sometimes, if it's a supply vessel, but also to get around sanctions, because they might transfer it to a ship that is flagged under a less sanctioned country. So they'll transfer the oil there, and then that ship will then take it to where it needs to go. So this ship has been sanctioned. It's on the OFAC list because of these ship-to-ship transfers. This is actually a cargo transfer and evading activity, which is probably dark activity and other things like that. Which, yeah, stopped transmitting its AIS, so that means it went dark. This is a pretty long period of time. So if you're tracking them on something like marine traffic, it's pretty much impossible to see them because they've turned off their signals, so there's no way to know what they're doing between those dates. So you really need satellite imagery or somebody who is tracking them who has satellite imagery to kind of verify that. Why aren't there mechanisms in place to prevent AIS spoofing? I think it's more that it's hard to do, like hard to prevent that, because you need the AIS system and you need to be able to change it because they change information when they reflag or when they sell to another company. So that information needs to be able to be changed. But also, I think the maritime industry as a whole is not really, I want to say policed. It's not really looked at as much as it should be. Um, people on the sea get away with a lot of stuff, and it's hard to keep track of. Um, and actually, this here recommends reasons that OFAC sanctions things, which is disabling, manipulating the AIS signal, little port call history, so that means it's probably either not showing that it's going to port, which is not normal shipping practices. So if you're watching a ship, ships basically exist to make money, unless you're a military ship. So if it starts engaging in activity that is not necessarily money-making activity, if they're not going from port to port, if they're not doing things that would generally make them money, that is abnormal shipping behavior, and that would be notable. Another thing that they do a lot is flag hopping and flag changes. So this is not uncommon at all. Cruise ships fly under different flags for cost reasons, like they can get around U.S. Taxes and stuff like that by flagging themselves under the Marshall Islands or Panama or somewhere that has less ability to, or they care less. They have less requirements for their ships. So, and that's not necessarily a bad. It's not great, but it's not like they're doing illicit activity. They're just trying to keep their costs down, and but that is notable. So if they're changing flags every week, there's probably something going on there. Same with name changes. A lot of times ships will bounce back and forth between names over and over. So I see like naval ships for all armies. They don't want you to know where they're going when they're doing an exercise or an activity. So they will maybe change their name to another military ship name and then go do whatever exercise they were going to do and then turn it back. That usually coincides with like a MMSI change. So they're changing the identity of the ship. They're pretending that they're another ship. And then the ownership and management. A lot of times you can you'll see a vessel and you'll see that their ownership is very cloudy. So if you track their ownership back, they like to level ownership. So if it's a company that has been sanctioned, they might have 40 shell companies, and each of those companies have shell companies, and each of those companies have shell companies, and then they own the ships. And one might be a commercial manager of one ship, one might be a registered owner of another ship, but you really have to do a lot of work to track it back. But that's how business reconnaissance plays into maritime, because it's not just about the ship itself, it's who owns it, who's running it, who's getting the stuff off of it when it goes into the port. What businesses are at the port that it's going to. Are these businesses shady? Do you want to look into them? And that's a pretty good indication. If it's always going to a certain port and dealing with certain companies or certain countries, that's an indication to look deeper too. So hopefully that is making sense so far. So some of the things I use are easily findable on Twitter. So the USNI News is a good one. It's the Naval Institute news site. So this is, US based. And they just post kind of news, where ships are, what's going on. So if you follow a lot of naval exercises, activity, even if you're doing like flight tracking, you can track ships, or if you're doing ship tracking, you can track flights, and you can kind of keep track of where the other one is based on. So for instance, if you're tracking ships and you see that there are a lot of Air Force flights in a certain area around an exercise, you could probably guess that even if you can't see one of these ships on marine traffic, that it probably is there because the Air Force has to land somewhere. So sometimes I'll just go to Twitter and I'll search for the ship itself. I mean, one that's big right now is the HMS Queen Elizabeth. So a lot of these ships have their own Twitter page, which is nice. Even though they kind of police what they put up, but if you're tracking them, you can see where they are. I mean, this one talks about what capabilities it has. It has pictures, videos. The Queen Elizabeth actually has a documentary filmmaker on board, I believe. So those are all points of OSINT that you can get. And I'm sure they're careful about what they put in the background, but you never know. So it's worth looking at. And then these ships usually don't travel alone. So there's a strike group with it. So even if the Queen Elizabeth was turning off its AIS and going dark, maybe if I don't know who's with it, one of the other ships that's traveling with it in the strike group, which maybe it just says, the strike group has its own hashtag too. Yeah, it shows you when it's in port. And then all kinds of cool charts and stuff. You can get a lot of intel just from their own pages. But if one of the ships turns off their AIS but the other one doesn't, I mean, you can track it that way because they always travel in groups. Another thing, I do a lot of like sanctions work and stuff in the China area, South Sea area, so I will check out the piracy map. So let me see if I can make this bigger. So the piracy map is pretty cool. It is, let me get the link. It shows you piracy events that have happened in the area. So if you're looking for a specific event or to see what a threat is in the area, you can use this map. And it'll tell you, like, the duty crew on board noticed 2 robbers near the lifeboat deck. A search was carried out. A Coast Guard apprehended 1 robber and managed to recover the stolen items. And then here it shows a suspicious vessel. And these are in 2021, so they update them often. So these are fun to look at, and it can give you an idea of what kind of threats are in the area and why a ship might be traveling in a certain way. Because there are areas, as you can see, the piracy is more clustered, so that might affect trade routes and how they travel. So if they vary their routes, it's not always that something is going on illegally. It might just be that, I don't know, there's a storm in the area, or that there's a lot of piracy in that specific area, or something bad has happened in that area. So you can't always go by just the AIS. You have to verify it with other things. Another thing I use is Covert Shores. So Covert Shores has a lot of information. They post a lot of things about submarines, which I don't really track too much. But it does give you a lot of information on, you know, where things are launched, what's being built, images of things like this underwater drone that might be of importance to your investigation, pointing out things that are on the ships. So this is a good resource. This is interesting. So if you can see historical patterns in anything, they're really fun to look at because, like if you're, this for instance is a research vessel. So there's various reasons research vessels are out there, whether they're scanning the bottom of the sea for like geography, so they can put oil pipelines down or lay cable, or you know, sometimes the military scans it to see how they can set things up underground, how they can use underwater drones, things like that. But the patterns are really cool, and you can let me see if I can enlarge this. So these are some of the Chinese research vessels, and you can see the different research vessels have different patterns. So like this one is scanning back and forth and back and forth, and they could be mapping an area out. So if you see this, it's an indication that they're mapping the bottom of the ocean floor for some reason. And usually you can, let me see, Dongfang Hong 3. Yeah, so if you see that, you can come over here and Google it, and I just used a simple Google dork, Dongfang Hong 3 and research and 2020, and we'll see if it actually goes to the site. Maybe not. Nope. I mean, but even putting in Dongfang Hong, you get information about, I mean, you get the marine traffic link, which is nice. And you get specific information about those ships. I mean, even just Wikipedia will give you the length, what's on the ship, like maybe it has what do they call those underwater vessels where they go down and research. For maritime science, that's very generic. But the thing with China is they tend to send vessels out for things that are not what they appear. Like fishing vessels are not always fishing vessels. They're the PLA, Navy, and there's a, let me see. Can't type, new keyboard. So Andrew Erickson, I follow him, and he's on Twitter as well. So he writes a lot about the PLA. Though if you're into looking at the South Sea Chinese ships, this is his site. He talks about how their ships travel, the military, militia, which is their fishing vessels. Let's see if I can find a... Okay. here. So this is recent. You might have heard about the ships positioned in the ocean in a line not too long ago. I think it was May. And everybody was watching them because there was a bunch of Chinese fishing boats just parked there in the ocean. And it appeared to be a show of force. They said it was due to weather, but these ships are not really fishing vessels. They're paid for by the PLA. And a lot of the times, if you're watching these on, let me see if I can find one. We can pull up on plan. PLA, maybe. Vessel. Just trying to find an IMO. I'm not sure that that's a real. I don't know that they would name it PLA Navy, but we'll see. So you can see here they don't even advertise their IMO. So the smaller vessels don't actually have to show an IMO. And most of the time they stay close to the shore, so they don't even either have an AIS or they don't turn it on. They only use RF signals. So a lot of times if you want to track those, you need some sort of RF tracking software. So this is Vessel Finder. That's another one. Let me see if I can. Most of them don't use their IMO, but maybe I can find it through a. Yeah, the Capo. It is a good resource for deep OSINTing. You can get lost in maritime stuff. It's on itself, like by itself, it's fun, but then you get pulled into like the business side of it, and you can make a whole bunch of connections there. You could track the people on the vessel. I mean, say you're tracking like a cruise ship or somebody's private yacht. You can track that. And if you had a subscription to something like Panjiva, you can see, not all, but you can see a lot of the shipments that these companies make. And it's a paid service, but you can track the company and oftentimes the ship number and then where it's delivering things and what it's delivering by code. So if you're looking for, I don't know, if you're looking for makeup being delivered to China by this specific company, you can get the bills of lading and track that through Panjiva, but that's a paid service, and again, a lot of this stuff is behind a paywall, which is unfortunate, but I get it. So this is a tug. I don't know if I trust this being named PLA Navy. That doesn't seem suspicious at all. But it is right here. Tracking Chinese ships is fun because there are a lot of things you can track, and you can easily see the patterns that they use when they turn their AIS on and off, or like what ports they go to, how often they go to them, which ships they use for which things. Chinese fishing vessels alone, let me see, fishing, legal fishing, and China. I know there's a specific site that has like really cool maps. North Korea's ghost ships linked to illegal fishing by China fleet. Oh, geez. That's unsettling. The capo. Whoa, that means you can actually track down people using OSINT in real time. Yes. So there's some things you can use for that. There we go. So if you're looking for warships, there's things like the warship cam. They post pictures of where these ships are in port or leaving port at that moment. And then you can take that and you can go to ships. Actually, let me give you the... That's warship cam. What else did I forget? This one, I'll give you this link. H.I. Sutton. Okay, so then you can go to ship spotting. So there are people, if you're into OSINT at all, you might know that there's people who look at everything as a hobby. So there's people who look at planes, there's people who look at trains, and there's people who look at ships, and that's all they do is they look at ships and they take pictures of them. I don't get it, but I thank them. So there's a bunch of these sites. Ship spotting is one of the bigger ones. Ship spotting, and I will post this in there for you. So this is just people taking pictures of ships at ports. So if you see something on a satellite and you need to verify that it's in a port, you can come here and you can see if you can find it taken in a picture by someone who was actually there, and it gives you the date. This one's pretty old, but it gives you the date. I mean, they put all the details of the ship for you, the photographer, so they might have other pictures. You could look for that. Sometimes ships have had a habit of, let me see if I can find this. It was a cool resource. I think it was H.I. Sutton. Ship painted. There was a ship that tried to hide its identity by repainting itself and giving it a different name. Like it painted off part of the number or the name on the side, and just called itself something else. And I think it was on this site, which is another good resource. Tanker Trackers. I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. Tankertrackers.com. They do have a paid service, but they do give you a lot of information without having paid for it. They post a lot of stuff about oil being moved in Iran and where it's going. They have a Twitter page. Nothing about meningitis. According to Marine Traffic's voyage planner, so this is a post about the Macron that I was talking about earlier, showing where it's going. So again, you don't necessarily need to have Marine Traffic. You can just look at their post for Marine Traffic. They have a website. And they have like breaking news. If you pay for it, you can get like their current updates of what's going on with Iranian oil, and they give an EIA forecast of, what does that stand for? I guess exports. So it shows the numbers. That generally doesn't matter to me, but it's there. They'll show you if they found any ships that that stood out to them. I think mostly they track oil on this site. So having the right tools and skill set, one can become the real master of this meat. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I don't, some days I feel like I'm a great OSINT analyst, and then other days I feel like I know absolutely nothing. So, but I am really good at digging into things really deeply, so I can get lost in this stuff forever. And my favorite thing is making charts. So once I find a thread to pull, I like making like a giant I2 chart or some sort of chart showing all the connections, and that's probably my favorite thing to do. So if you use ship spotting, you can get some pictures of the vessels that you wouldn't see on marine traffic or vessel finder or anything like that. You might not even see in satellite photos because you're only seeing it from the top. And if they repainted, they won't look the same from the top. And if they change their name and, shittily painted half of their name off, but you can still see it in the picture, it's, having that picture from the side could be useful. There are sites, this is going to be sad, but I'm going to reference my actual own blog to get this link. Maritime. And I'm not doing this to advertise for myself. It's because I don't remember the actual. Oh, here it is. So Maritime Connector is another one. Oh, it's down. Oh no. I hope that's just a temporary thing. Maritime Connector is like a LinkedIn for people who work on ships. So I hope it's not. Oh man. I wonder if they stopped being a thing. Ugh, 2017. Yeah, it might not be the most recent, but maybe it'll come back up. Here's the thing for the link. Just used it not that long ago, so I'm surprised it's down. But I can actually reference my thing again and show you a screenshot. There are a few other sites that do the same thing, so once you see what I did here with it. So it shows you the ship. You can put in the actual ship name. And Maritime Connector. And then it'll show you people who work on the ship. You can click on these people and it will give you all sorts of ridiculous information, like, whether they're married. I think it gives, their nationality, their medical information, their blood type, their high school. It's pretty ridiculous. And there are a few other sites like this, I know. So if this one is down, I'm sure that another one can be located. And LinkedIn itself is a good resource because you can go to LinkedIn and you can type in the company if it's Maersk or something. And I'm sure you can see who works there, and then you can narrow down who is actually on the ship. And sometimes then you can pivot that to social media and see if they're posting pictures. And that counts for even, warships or other ships. They will, I'm trying to think of one that will actually have people on it. HMS Q. So if we do this by hashtag. Here's people, just random people posting that they saw it. So that's a good example. So you can also do this on Twitter. A lot of people who work on the ships will take pictures and post them. You know, and then you have the names of who's on there. Especially if you're working on military stuff, they'd love to take PR pictures, and oftentimes it will be in an article, and the article will say, you know, so-and-so is on the ship, or they'll get a quote from them, and then you can use that to pivot to other things, you know, other ships they work on, maybe what their specific job is, and then, you know, their email or whatever, and you can just pivot from there and find more and more information. Trying to find somebody on the ship. People really love ships. I've never actually been on a big ship like this. I would like to, because they're probably much bigger than they look in these pictures. So I only have a few minutes left. Does anybody who's watching have any questions or anything they want me to look into? Otherwise, I'm just going to keep poking around on marine traffic as I closed it. So what I wanted to look at is, I know there was a Scientology and yacht and IMO. 681. I'm never gonna remember that. 6810811. 6810811. Nope. I hope you all can hear my nice new keyboard making clicky noises. It's my favorite. Someone should make the manifest show, but with a boat this time. Yeah, I mean, wasn't that Titanic? I haven't actually watched that show. I keep seeing it, and it reminds me too much of Lost, and then I get mad that they're just rehashing plots. So I saw this ship. I think this is it. The Free Winds. And yeah, you can see how Google Dorks, even minor Google Dorks, are helpful. So I think this Free Winds yacht is a Scientology yacht. Yes, Scientology cruise ship, the Free Winds. I came across this randomly. I was just clicking on things in marine traffic, and I thought that was really interesting that they had their own yacht. Not surprising though. Is there a way to track down passengers in a plane? I know we can track down the planes in real time, but how do we know? I mean, you could probably go to social media and see if they've posted their ticket, because a lot of times they do that. Like, I'm going to Aruba, here's my ticket. But I don't think there's a way to track, to see who's on a plane, or at least there really should not be. So tracking passenger manifests. I don't have any passenger manifests. The best manifests I have are when people leak their own info online, which they do, and they say where they're going and what they're doing, and then you just track it back from there. But like a group manifest, you're not going to be able to get that. I would be highly surprised if you could find that, just because of all especially with planes, after 9/11. Yes, that would be super scary. And somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but I really don't think any manifests. I mean, with ships, it's easier just because I honestly feel like people don't see it as a threat. Now, I don't think you can find easily the manifest of a yacht or something or a cruise ship. But it's hard enough to find, what they're carrying in open source. I mean, you have to pay for it, but I don't think in general people consider the ramifications of the shipping supply chain until something like the Evergreen gets stuck in the canal and then everything stops. And then everybody cares about ships again and then they forget about it. So the free winds is, where are you at? Is that it? Nope, that's not it. Where is it? Oh, right there. So it's showing this free winds is parked right here, little ship guy. And if you click on the actual ship, it gives you the extra information. It's ATA, time of departure. And you can't see past track because I'm not paying for it, but it'll show you the speed and it'll show you the draft. And the draft is important. If you look up the ship's original draft, which is how deep it sits in the ocean, which that information is for bigger ships, it's usually easily located through a Google Dork or something. If you were tracking like an oil ship and you were trying to see if it's offloaded oil or if it's taken on oil, same with cargo, if it's a cargo ship that has illegal stuff on it, they may report a certain weight and then the weight differs. So if they have oil, they meet with another ship and their draft changes, then you know that they've lost oil or they've gained oil after meeting with that ship. So that is a good indication that they're doing a ship-to-ship transfer and they're transferring oil. Same thing if they went into port and their draft changed, then you would know that they offloaded something at that port. But you would have to know, I don't know if this draft here that is showing is the standard draft for this ship or if it is adjusting when it changes. I would think that this right here is the standard draft for the ship just because I believe that you have to pay for that information. But we'll see really quick in the last minute. Draft reported max. So this is the max draft of the ship. This little lock is showing you where it would tell you if the draft changed. Which is another thing that you can only see when you pay for it, unfortunately. But if you do have access to paid tools for work or whatever, this is something to look at. If the draft is changing after an activity, that indicates that they have lost cargo or gained cargo. Same with speed, whether their speed changes, if they slow down to nothing in the middle of the ocean and stop, you're not making money when you're stopped. So if it's a cargo vessel and it stops dead in the middle of the ocean, it's obviously doing something worth looking into. Okay, well, it's 4:00. I could talk forever about ships. But I will close it out for now. And maybe I'll do another one of these if people enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, you can find me on Twitter at wondersmith_ray. Please send me a message. I don't mind. Or you can find me on the Searchlight Discord server. I would gladly chat with you about OSINT or ships or anything that you want to chat about. And you can also find me with OSINT Curious. I do live streams over there, and there's tons of OSINT information there too. So thank you for joining me today, and hopefully I will see you next Thursday at the same time for, I'm going to do scams. We're going to talk about scams and how to track them with OSINT and maybe show some scams. So thanks everybody for coming, and feel free to subscribe if you liked it. All right, see you guys.